And we're back for another episode of Standpoint. I'm Gabe Groisman, and it is Independence Day weekend, the 4th of July weekend, a weekend full of joy and excitement, fireworks happening all over our country, beautiful drone displays, which is a new thing. And this is our special Independence Day episode. We're dedicating it to honoring our troops who safeguard our freedom. Did you know that our armed services comprise of over 2.8 million military personnel? 1.3 of those are in active duty. By the way, there's a whole conversation about the size of the military. It hasn't grown as much as many of us want to see it grow, but that's not what today's about. Today, we want to reflect the unwavering dedication and the sacrifices made throughout history to secure and maintain our cherished independence by those that wear the uniform. And we salute their courage and commitment to preserving the principles upon which our nation was founded. So to do that, we have with us Vice Admiral Herm Shelanski, who served over 38 years in the Navy, incredible career as a naval aviator, an aircraft carrier captain, and a vice admiral, and a lot in between those titles. We'll hear about his career, what it meant to him, the importance of service to our nation, and supporting our troops on this 4th of July weekend. So, Vice Admiral, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Gabe. It's a pleasure to be here, especially on this weekend. And thanks for, making this dedicated to our armed services. As you know, it's soft spot in my heart. Anytime we get an opportunity, we should always thank them and understand exactly what they're doing for us.
Yeah, 100%. For me, it doesn't feel right to celebrate this weekend without saluting our troops, because they're the reasons why we can celebrate this. But listen, let's go back a little bit. I think people want to know these days. People are thinking, how can we serve our country? There's so much instability in the world. I think there's going to be a refocus on the military and on service. Maybe that's just the optimistic side of me. But why don't you share a little bit about your story? I know it was over 38 years ago, but how'd you end up in the military? I know you went to college and then you went to officers training school, I think. Why don't you walk us through that?
Sure, I'd love to. I think most kids at the age of 21, 22, after college aren't really that sure what they want to do. And I had my heart set. I mean, my career was kind of laid out for me. I wanted to be a doctor like my father. My mother was a nurse, so like medical career was my focus. But when I got done school, I had this like restlessness, and I'd always felt the need to serve my country. I mean, I grew up in a middle class, very comfortable home. I had a great education. Our family, second generation coming over from Russia to escape the pogroms. And we're in a country that has so much to give us. And I felt the need to get back to it. Told my mom and dad, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do one tour. I'm going to join the Navy, and then I'm going to get out and I'm going to go back to medical school. And they said, okay. So they bought that. But sort of an amazing thing happened. And I think this is something that a lot of young men and women today don't really realize, that the military gives you something very special. And it happened to me. I found really three things that made me want to stay and make a career of it. And that was that, number one, you woke up every day with this focus on something really important. Every day you woke up, you were in a mission that was dedicated to the security of our nation. I mean, it was kind of heady stuff, knowing that what you were doing meant the security of your family and our country and everything that we stand for. The second part of it was the camaraderie, the people that, I got to work with, amazing people from all over the world, men and women of different cultures and different colors and different religions that bonded together under a common purpose, right? That was bigger than the individual goals of life. And we just found this brotherhood and sisterhood that was remarkable. And we knew that we each had each other's backs. We complemented each other's strengths, and we made up for each other's weaknesses to create this amazing team every day that had a mission and we're focused on it. The third thing was, like, I really had a lot of fun. I felt, I started out as a naval aviator, flying airplanes off and on an aircraft carrier. I'm telling you, that launch from going from 0 to 250 miles an hour on a catapult launch, in 2.5 seconds, you're going 250 miles an hour it's better ride than Disney World or Busch Gardens or any other ride you can imagine. So, but once I commanded a squadron, I got picked up for this nuclear power program. Um, After a while, it became really important to me to have this next goal, and that was to command a nuclear powered aircraft carrier. So after like rigorous schooling, getting a master's, PhD in nuclear power, then through some practical training, I became the executive officer, which is the second in command of a brand new ship, USS Ronald Reagan, and we commissioned that ship. And then I went on to command a command ship in Sixth Fleet, Italy. So I was the captain of that ship and sailed around the Sixth Fleet Command Center, missions for anti-terrorist and NATO support. And then my life's dream, 19 and 2006, really took command of the USS Harry S. Truman, the number 75 aircraft carrier, and got to command her for 2.5 years, which is really a long time for command. We took her out to a wartime deployment in Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting ISIS, fighting the terrorists over all the way deep missions into Afghanistan. Out there for 7 months, brought everyone home safely. It was really a highlight of my tour. From that, I made, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So from that, I made flag officer, and then, a lot of interesting jobs from that, culminating, as you said, as a 3-star admiral, as the naval inspector general. So that was my last tour for 3 years in the Navy, overseeing, inspecting, and investigating everything that the Secretary of the Navy thought was important for me to take a look at.
Wow. So when you enlisted 38 years ago, went to officers training school 38, in the beginning of your career, a little bit more than 38 years ago, did you ever think that you would do a lifetime there? I mean, what was the shift? You were going only for a year, you're going to go for a few years, you're going to go back to medical school. What was that turning point for you to decide, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this for a career. I'm going to stay in.
Yeah. So 1980s when I joined, and by 1982 I was flying missions. By end of 1982, I was selected to be a mission commander in the Airborne Early Warning Aircraft, the E-2 Hawkeye, which is the airplane that I flew. And so I felt that I was really, really good at what I did. But more than that, at the end of that tour, after doing 2 deployments in the Western Pacific, flying against the Soviet Union, who was the big threat at the time, and people tend to forget how important that was during the Cold War. The Navy was out at the tip of the spear the whole time. And I felt like really what we were doing every day was so important. And we were like really doing some great stuff out there. And so the typical Navy, when you're done your first tour, they give you an opportunity to do something else. So they sent me to Navy postgraduate school, where I got a master's in electrical engineering and space systems engineering. And they said, hey, Herm, how about we put you on an aircraft carrier as a navigator? And I said, yeah, I've never done that. That sounds like fun. I went to do that. And so each tour I kept saying, well, I'm just going to do this next tour, and then I'm going to get out. But everything that they gave me continued to challenge me. And for some unexplicable reason, I just love the challenge. I think there's a lot of people out there, young people, that want to be challenged and meet that challenge. And like every time, every new assignment was something new. And I just felt elated by that. And it really pumped me up. And I said, wow, I can't leave now. I mean, the next challenge is going to be even better and even greater.
It's incredible. And what's incredible to me also, it jumps out as you're speaking, is, well, first of all, you started serving the year I was born, so there's that. But on top of that, really, when you think of a military life here in the United States, it's like a parallel universe. It's entirely a parallel universe to what we're seeing in society. So shared mission, shared goals, hard work, ethics, hierarchy. Building your way up to the top of the food chain based on how well you did in your previous job. And we're seeing, I mean, today is July 5th, Friday, July 5th. Yesterday, July 4th, we saw all over the country something that I logically I knew I would see, but I still didn't expect to see. I was born and raised in this country where I am in Miami, everyone, thousands of people on the beach, fireworks, American flags everywhere, pure
Right.
love for this country within our Jewish community, also pure love for this country and thankfulness for being in this country. But then on the flip side, you saw in big cities like New York and Chicago, where the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian people were marching, burning American flags yesterday in our major cities. And
Yeah.
and so much jumps out at me when I see that. But the first thing that I think about is they don't know how good they have it here in the United States, right? And like they're
Yeah.
not rowing in the same direction. So many of us don't understand that direction. How do you think we can export that shared mission and drive that we have today in the United States military out into our greater society?
Well, yeah. Well, out of all the people that I've worked with, so there are multinational people of multi-religions, and we have Muslims in the United States Navy throughout the military. They are avid Americans. And I think we just need the voice of people that have served and the people have served along others to get out there to tell these people that, to your point, they have never had it so good. There's no other country in the world that, has a founding document like we have, in the Declaration of Independence, back in July 4th, 1776, when they published it, where all men are created equal. Where is that, right? Where else in the world do people as a moral foundation for a country say that? Or that say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? It certainly isn't in Palestine, or I'm not Palestine, in Hamas-led regions. It's not anywhere else in the Middle East. It's in Israel, but as an exception. United States, there are places in Europe that come close, but even Europe doesn't have foundational freedoms and morals that this country is based on. And sadly, I like you, I find it abhorrent that they don't, on the one day that everyone could come together as a people, as a nation, that this is the place that if anything is going to change or anything, look, we all know that our country can continue to get better, but this is the foundation of who we are. And sadly, some people just don't get that. And I think if we could get more of our military or former military to get out there and let people know how important it is, what this nation brings, and not just to us, but to the world, is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple points on that is, first of all, the sounds in the background. I hope they make it through the final cut, because that's the sound of America on the 4th of July weekend. I know you're out.
It is.
You're out outside the city in the Northeast, getting some fresh air and enjoying time with your family. And I'm doing the same, but I'm getting ready to go out with my RV later this week with my kids to the Northeast and get out to the mountains and enjoy our beautiful country. So I love those sounds, and I appreciate someone with such an illustrious career taking your time out the 4th of July weekend to speak with me. Can you explain a little bit? There's a lot of discussions going on, and again, I don't want to really speak about politics today. I want to, which I do a lot of. I speak about politics all day, every day. But I do want to speak about the importance of the Navy, and so much of what you all do is keep shipping lanes open and keep our economy afloat based on doing that, based on the work of making sure that our ships going in and out of the United States and around the world, frankly, but also in and out of the United States, can actually flow freely and keep our economy strong the way it is, and even our national security. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Let's take a minute away from the show on this 4th of July weekend to talk about preparedness. One thing we've learned over the last several years is that it's our responsibility to be prepared for whatever is thrown at us. And one way to do that is to be sure that we have the medications that we need in case another pandemic comes, other issues come up in our society. We can't just rely on getting to the doctor in time, getting to the pharmacy, getting what we need for ourselves and our family. There is a way to be prepared. And the Wellness Company developed something to take care of exactly that. It's called the Contagion Emergency Kit. You've heard me talk about it before on the show. It's a prescription-only stockpile of life-saving medications, including Tamiflu, ivermectin, Z-Paks, and others. It's pretty quick. You get your prescription online, and it gets sent to you. Every American should have at least one of these kits in their home. I think it's also important to take it with you if you're traveling with your family, like many of us will be doing over the summer. Make sure to go to twc.health/Gabe for our listeners. They have a special for our listeners here of Standpoint. Grab your Contagion kit, right now. That's twc.health/Gabe. And the code is also Gabe, easy for you, GABE. It saves you 10% at checkout and gives you free shipping. Of course, kits are only available in the United States. Let's go back to the show. Thanks so much.
Now there's over 100 ships, 200,000 sailors that are out there right now protecting our national security. And part of that is just like you said, they're at those really important places in the world that are straits where all sorts of international commerce goes through. And of course, commerce keeps the world alive. It keeps the world economy moving. And those places, and we can see this now, what's going on in the Red Sea, when they're threatened, like for instance, the Houthis shooting missiles at tankers and any transport ship going through the Red Sea. The United States Navy is there. They're the ones that are protecting it. They're the ones that are going to, shooting down those missiles. They're the ones that are and going into and destroying those missile sites into Yemen. Those straits are just one example. The Straits of Bab el-Mandeb, the Suez Canal, the Straits of Hormuz. We saw what happened years ago, decades ago, when Iran shut down those straits and inhibited the flow of oil that's coming out of the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. The same thing in the West with China, Taiwan, Singapore. International trade through those straits, the Malaccan Straits, there are incredibly essential, and our Navy's there. Our Navy's there every day, and it's no wonder that when there's a crisis in the world, our president typically asks, "Hey, where are aircraft carriers?" Because with that nuclear power, the naval aircraft carrier and the strike group can be within 48 hours of any place in the world when there's a crisis. And they're there right now, getting ready to prepare for whatever, emergent situation comes up. So very important. Yeah.
And now we see the president moving over. He's done it. He did it earlier in the war as well, moving over a couple aircraft carriers to the Mediterranean Sea, to the coast of southern Lebanon, sort of as a way to threaten Hezbollah not to do more than they're doing. I mean, they're already shooting rockets on a daily basis. But can you give us an understanding of sort of the strength, the power, the firepower that one of these aircraft carriers have?
Sure. I mean, so there's nothing like it. I mean, it's the most powerful warship in the world because of its, the naval aviation aircraft that are on board. So the aircraft carrier has its own flight deck. It launches airplanes with these steam-powered catapults, and now the latest aircraft carrier, electromagnetics, which I could talk all day about that on another session, but just, on a very small area to launch an airplane and get it airborne and recover it with a hook and wires is quite a feat. But we have 60 of those tactical jets, right? We have strike fighters, we have electronic attack, we have airborne early warning and combat control. We have helicopters that can fight submarines, find them, fight them, and kill them when needed. So 60 of these airplanes is equivalent to, if not better than, over 95% of the world's total air forces. So when you think about that, and the United States Navy has 11 of these active right now, with number 12 coming online, the John F. Kennedy is going to be commissioned soon. We have an amazing ability for, to affect world affairs at any moment, at any time, and our national security, to protect it and to keep things from happening, right? So really, when you think back to my first aircraft carrier when I was the XO on the Reagan, his thing was peace through strength. And that's exactly what we do. We're out there with strength ready to inhibit and stop anyone from doing something crazy, just like when we put an aircraft carrier off of Lebanon to just show, hey, we're here. Don't do anything stupid because we'll make you pay for it.
Yeah, and just to put a fine point on that, hopefully we do more. We as Americans do more than just threaten when the time comes, because the threats and the power and the peace through strength, the deterrence power only works when someone actually crosses the red line and they see consequences to that, which we haven't seen under Obama. We saw Obama draw red lines, a line in the sand that was crossed back and forth more than once, and Biden's doing the same thing. But I'm pulling myself out again. I'm pulling myself out of a political discussion. It's hard. That's the space I'm in all the time.
I know.
But let's talk about something that you could probably only talk about now that you're retired.
Yeah.
And it's it's the mid 80s. You're a naval aviator. Most people probably don't know what that is unless if you come from a naval family. And then along comes Top Gun with Tom Cruise and
Right.
all of those guys. And suddenly you had the coolest job in the country where you told people, I did what they did. Tell us, did that
Yeah.
affect? It seems like a dumb question. Did it actually impact the lives
Oh,
of the guys on the ship with you?
yeah, big time. I mean, first of all, Navy recruiting, the years following the first Top Gun hit all-time highs, and
Really?
we have never topped that since then. And I was hoping kind of Top Gun, Maverick was going to do the same. Recruiting's been up, but not like that very first Top Gun. Yeah, I mean, look, the culture of aviation, naval aviation in particular, is a really amazing culture because you take young aviators and not only do you give them the tools, you train them how to fly, you train them how to do the electronics, you train them how to do the combat, but it's not a one and done deal. Every flight, when you come back, you get a debrief, you get critiqued. And after, at the beginning, you're going, wow, they're so critical of me. I thought I did a good job. But no, I mean, aviation is like, we've got to be the best. And that's what came out in Top Gun, to be the best of the best. And once you get into that, buy into that culture, I particularly loved to have, to seek to continue to grow in my profession. And I would go out and make sure that I got criticism. I made sure I got feedback on everything that I did because, like Maverick, when you get to Top Gun, you want to be the best. And there's high standards of performance that are expected of you when you get there. And so that cultural aspect is so true. And those that seek it out really enjoy it. I mean, it's really, we're a team, right? We're a team when you go fly, but there's this competitive edge of, hey, I'm going to be the best that there is out there so that I can make my team the best that there is. And it was so fun when Top Gun captured a lot of that. Of course, a little bit of Hollywood thrown in there, but
Sure.
even Top Gun Maverick 2 has that too. When that whole new crew comes in that he's training for that mission, it's pretty remarkable and fairly, except for some of the particulars of the mission, pretty accurate.
And not everybody's so good looking.
Not everyone. Not everyone. Yeah.
I feel like the Navy needs to do, in all seriousness, that these days what drives interest is these Netflix series, right? So like Formula One, for example, huge in Europe, huge in South America. In the U.S., it hadn't really caught on until they came out with, I forgot what it's called, Live to Drive or Thrive to Drive or something. The Formula One series on Netflix.
Yeah.
Suddenly, ticket sales went through the roof, and people started understanding how exciting of a sport that is. I feel like the Navy and the military needs to do something like that. I can tell you, I serve on the Air Force Academy Selection Committee for Senator Rubio. And I get to interview the best of the best high school students. And, the first question we always ask is, why do you want to be in the Air Force?
Yeah.
And everybody says, well, I want to fly, sir. And the guy next to me who served, said, well, I think it's about 5% of people get to fly. The rest of us do have support roles. But it gets there. It gets, the messaging, the excitement gets to some people. But I feel like there's so much more that needs to be done. There's been some discussion recently on compulsory service, and we can get into it or not. But just sort of, what are your thoughts on that, on getting more people to serve and how that would impact our society?
Look, I think serving is a must, and I really believe in it. I wish the country could find its way there. I mean, I think there's power in an all-volunteer force, but there's also something to be said about compulsory service. Because I think when people give the opportunity, even if they're not in the military, even if they're doing something international service, that common bond that they give back to their country, I think it's an important concept. And I think it would make people more appreciative of our nation and the fact that they contributed to it in some way. And I know a lot of people want to get out, today, and there's a lot of great jobs out there and they're going to make a lot of money. But this is our nation, and there's a lot to be said about being able to make a lot of money in a place that has the freedoms that we have. And we need people to protect it. And even if they're in for 2 years compulsory service, I think it would do more to bring people in this nation together. I think people would see and they would serve with people from all over. They'd have a better idea of what this country's about. And I think they buy into it. And I think there's something really, there was a whole book about skin in the game, right? I mean, I think this is what it's about. You have skin in the game now, and I think people would be better citizens if they had that opportunity to serve.
Yeah, look, from where I sit, America is the best nation in the world, and people today confuse political instability. They confuse, the social fights that you're seeing on different issues as kind of blots on this nation, or even they go back to historical periods when the morals and ethics of today weren't, things weren't at those standards, but they're there. But it's just a gross misunderstanding of what this country is and what the purpose of this country is, and how we here in this country, it's not supposed to be perfect, right? We're supposed to be working towards the pursuit
Absolutely.
of life,
That's right.
liberty, and justice, and the pursuit of happiness, right? And that's what we're here.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. I mean, it was so important. As July 4th came, I was reading a bunch of stuff, and I'm a big fan of George Washington. Like, what a man of character, what a man of vision, right? And what a leader. Even though he lost a bunch of battles, eventually he won the war, and he was able to do something that I think no other leader at the time could do. But he and a lot of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and a lot of the folks that were there in as opposed to what was going on in Great Britain, where it was, the royalty and the upper class and sort of I'm not going to talk to you if you don't have, some type of birthright. In America, it was all about gentility and niceness and politeness. And, it was a whole different ability for this nation to open up itself to all sorts of things, to continue, like you said, to make this country better, to build upon what the founding fathers gave us. Not perfect, but boy, what a foundation of things that could build a constitution, a Bill of Rights, which came later. All of that is so essential to what we have. And, like you said, having people better understand that foundational principles of our nation, I don't think they would be out on the day that we celebrate such an amazing instant in history and burning American flags. I think it's sad that that's the way that they would celebrate such greatness in the world. And I wish I had a better opportunity to show them otherwise. But, I guess, Gabe, we keep trying.
Keep pushing, right? We have no other choice.
We do.
That's for sure. Why don't you tell me, Vice Admiral, when you were commanding the USS Harry S. Truman, it's over 5,000 people on that aircraft carrier, I believe.
Right.
And tell me a lessons or story somewhere where you were able to, show how that really shows how people were really working together towards one mission. It seems so different than you take any town of 5,000 people where everybody's doing their own thing, and sometimes they come together, but most of the time everybody's going in their own direction. It's just the difference between that and life on a ship. What can you share there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a couple things that I felt that I did as captain. I felt was essential to bring, to create the best of teams. And the first one was communication. So every day I had this communication thing. It was a loudspeaker that would transmit throughout the ship. And it was every day I'd get on it and I'd say, good morning, shipmates. This is the captain. Almost. Good morning, shipmates. This is your captain. I just want to let you know where we are today. We're out in the middle of the Persian Gulf. We're getting ready to launch our first strike of the day. We've got 20 airplanes. They're going over Iraq. We've got 6 different targets out there, and we're going to go kill some ISIS today. So, hey, we want you all to be on your toes. I want you to be prepared for the day. I want you to do it safely. And then we're going to get this job done, and we're going to continue to go. Captain out. And then, so every day, everyone knew what we were doing that day, what was so important about it. And then also at the end of the day, I would bring up one sailor, and he would come up to the bridge, which is on the tower of the aircraft carrier. And I'd get to introduce him to the crew over my announcing system. I'd say, hey, shipmates, up here with me is our sailor of the day, Seaman Jones. He's from Waco, Texas. Let me tell you about what a great sailor this guy is. He does, he's the guy that you probably don't see, because he's up in the forward forecastle working on the ship's lines and the ship's anchor every day. What he does is so important because, we couldn't get underway without this equipment that he maintains. His work is essential to the end state of every day what we're doing here. And so every day, this one new sailor would come up and I'd tell him what he did. Sometimes very mundane jobs, sweeping the decks, washing dishes, preparing meals, chipping paint, oiling some type of engine. But everybody at least understood that what they did was essential to the end state. Every sailor contributing positively to the mission. And at the end of the day, they knew that they were part of the end state. They weren't pilots. They didn't have the glory of the Top Gun guys, flying in and dropping bombs. But they knew that the ship couldn't have done it without them. And there's a great story I like to relate about these some CEOs that came out to visit the ship. They spent the night and they got to see the flight operations, which is really kind of a spectacular thing. So after flight ops, about 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, they're walking around the ship and they meet this young sailor and they introduce themselves and they say, "Hi, what do you do? Who are you?" And they go, "Hey, I'm Seaman Jones and I'm from blah, blah, blah." And they go, what's your job on the ship? He goes, "Well, I want you to know I've got the most important job on the ship." And they look at this kid and he's standing in front of a printer. And they says, "How is your job so important?" He goes, "Well, see these cards that I'm making copies of? This is today's mission. These are the briefing cards that our pilots are taking up in the air with them. And on this are our waypoints, our strike points, our fuel consumption, our communication circuits, all the code words of the day. Without these cards, our pilots wouldn't know how to get to the target. And if they didn't get to the target, they're not going to kill the terrorists on the ground. If they didn't kill the terrorists on the ground, then those terrorists are eventually going to come to the United States. They're going to threaten our country and they're going to threaten my family. So what I'm doing today is the most important job on the ship." And I'll tell you, these CEOs walked away and they wrote this big article back at their company and said, "If only we could get our copy boy to buy into our mission, we would have the most amazing company in the world." And to me, it was gratification that the message was getting through, that my crew knew that as a team and what they did individually to contribute to that team was incredibly important. And they continued to do that throughout 7 months of wartime deployment, away from home, away from their family, away from luxuries of life. In those days, we didn't really have a lot of internet. We didn't have telephone calls from the ship. So your communication was really scant. And, they left their families at home, wives, sisters, brothers, moms, dad, kids that had to fend for themselves. And that's a sacrifice, but they were in on it. They were part of the team. It was an amazing thing.
So it's obvious why you do inspirational speaking now, and yeah, I know you speak to companies and such, because when you relay that story, all I'm thinking about is we need that in every layer of our society, not just in our companies, but in our communities, and not just in our communities, but in our homes, right? Where everybody knows their role and why it's important. And they're not stuck in that role. That's the America part, right? You're not stuck in that role. If you continue to push, you can continue to succeed. But just knowing that common purpose is so amazing. Why don't you tell me a little bit about? I know what you're doing now. You're doing some of that speaking, but you also are. I think you're a fellow with JINSA. You work with JINSA, the think tank out of DC.
I do.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I became involved with JINSA, the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, about a decade ago when I was still active duty. And since retirement, I've written some papers for them in terms of support for Israel and some of the legal aspects and some of the work that I had done with the IDF when I was active duty, and understanding their process in terms of warfare and trying to relate to the public a better understanding of who the IDF is and what Israel is. And JINSA in general does that. I mean, they have an incredible cadre of retired flag officers and think tank, really big thinkers, to help our nation understand, right, the common bounds between Israel and the United States, and how important, our security is to have Israel, like the only democracy in the Middle East, and what it does there and how it helps us. And they've been, incredible allies to the war of terror for 2 decades, and we've been allies for them. And our strength does. I mean, that combined work is so important for our nation. And so JINSA helps to get that across. They help people understand that there's more to Israel than just a nation. It's one of the most important nations. It is the most important nation in the Middle East. And the work, some of the articles that I wrote and some of the lectures that I go to help the nation understand that. And the organization is really a premier organization to get that type of information across.
Yeah, incredible. I've always been so impressed with him. And actually, we connected through one of your colleagues there, Jake. But it turns out that our paths should have crossed a few months ago when you were honored with the Aleph Institute, which is an organization founded by actually my rabbi here in South Florida, Rabbi Lipskar, to provide, amongst other things, to provide support for Jewish service members. And what was your interaction with Aleph? How was that?
Oh, I was a speaker for their chaplain conference, so I got to tell some great stories about my Navy career as a Jew in the Navy. And at one time, I was the senior Jewish officer in all of Department of Defense. So, no pressure. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting as a Jew, people think, oh, Jews are not in the military. And that's just not true. I mean, we're a small percentage of the nation. And so we're a small percentage of the military, but we're there, right? There's a lot of Jews. And historically, Jews have served in the military in the United States. Revolution, 1812, World War I, World War II, Cold War, Vietnam, Korea, all the way to present day war against terror. And so it's important, I think, for people to realize that, hey, there are Jewish officers, there's senior Jewish officers, and like really important Jewish officers. Some of the most important figures in the history of the military were Jewish. And unfortunately, that word just doesn't get out enough. And so I was able to kind of walk through a few things and talk about my career as a Jew and how important it was to me, because I was called out at the second week I'm in the military from my Marine Corps drill instructor. And it's a kind of a funny story, because he was looking for class officers. And he goes, all right, class, we're going to have to, the first officer we need is our treasurer. So I want all the business majors to take one step forward, because, we're all on the line. We're all out of tension. Like, we're kind of scared to death of this guy, because he's 6'2", rock hard solid, Vietnam vet, recon ranger, shrapnel still in his body. I mean, the guy was a terror. And he's got the Smokey the Bear hat on. And the first candidate steps out and he goes up, he goes, Dobson, where'd you go to school? And Dobson goes, I went to University of Delaware, sir. He goes, Delaware? We know what kind of students come out of Delaware. You won't do, get back in line. And then he does the same thing to candidate Officer Clark. And if you've seen the movie Officer and a Gentleman, my drill instructor was an advisor for that movie. Anyway, he then says, this won't do. All of you get back in line. Are there any Jews in the class? So shit, I step 1 foot forward and I'm like looking to the left and the right. I'm the only guy standing there. And he comes up to me and with that hat, he pokes it right on my forehead and he goes, Shelanski, we all know that Jews own half the world and mortgage the other half. You're going to be our class treasurer. And it was like this moment of, hey, I didn't know I was going to be called out at the very beginning for being a Jew. And I'm like, okay, so is this going to be a moment where I'm just going to kind of hide from it? I'm going to quit. Is it going to be something that's going to, I'm going to be worried about? Or is it going to make me, strong? And I felt that, all right, you're going to call me out. You want me to, I'm going to be the Jew. I'm going to show you what a Jew can do here in your military. And it became a source of strength and a source of pride from at that very moment on. It's funny how, things happen that God works in mysterious ways. And that day he wanted me to step forward and, I never looked back.
No, listen, that's just absolutely amazing. So when people have those moments, and you kind of have to decide how you're going to deal with it. Sometimes it's subconscious, but you definitely didn't go out and file a complaint and call your parents. You just you sucked it up and you said, I'm going to show this guy by by my actions, which is amazing. So listen, we're past half an hour, and I want to respect your time on this holiday
Yeah.
weekend. But I want to give you an opportunity. Is there any message you want to send out to the people on the this 4th of July weekend? We're honoring our troops, saluting our troops. Your career over 38 years in the Navy at the highest levels of the Navy, giving your whole life to that. I mean, what message would you like to send out to people on this Independence Day weekend?
Well, I'd say to everyone, please take a moment of your day, of your weekend, say a blessing, a prayer, whatever way that you do, to remember that right now, out there in the farthest reaches of the world are your fellow citizens, right? They're out there sacrificing their time. They're putting their lives on the line for all of us. And not just for us, but for our freedoms and for the principles, for our Constitution, and all the things that make this country great. So please think of them at some point this weekend and send them some love and some blessings. And I thank you for the time today, Gabe. It's always a pleasure, and it's great to meet you.
Likewise, Vice Admiral Herm Shelanski, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. You're here representing all the servicemen and women, and it's just such an honor to have you. This is the way to recognize and to celebrate the 4th of July weekend. So thank you so much, everyone. Please be sure to like, subscribe, follow all the great things you do to support podcasts, and God bless America. See you next time.